All right, Nuggets fans, welcome in to Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am excited to discuss last night's Denver Nuggets win as the Nuggets defeat the Toronto Raptors for the second time in a week. Final score 121-119, and it was a big game. Big game for this Denver Nuggets squad. They needed that one. They needed to find a way to get that win, despite the fact that the chips were against them after losing Aaron Gordon 4 minutes into the game. But they ultimately figured it out, and they figured it out with some young guys. We're going to talk all about it. We're going to go over Christian Braun, Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson. Going to talk about some different things that Michael Malone did that I thought were really impressive. And just a nice referendum on Calvin Booth, huh? I know not a lot of Nuggets fans want to hear it, but this was a Calvin Booth W if I've ever seen it. Today's podcast is brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for everything sports betting. Really quickly, BetOnline has the earliest odds to in-game live betting. BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL, to entertainment and political props. Head on over to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Once again, I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I don't know if you can tell this differently than any other day. I'm pretty tired. I got back from the arena pretty late last night and then stayed up and did some more writing for something else. And boy, it's been a lot. It's been a lot over the course of this past 24 hours. So, and I know that there's some stuff within the next 12 that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be pretty stressed about. So we'll talk about it all. Not that. We're actually not going to talk about that on purpose, but hopefully this can be a nice little distraction for the folks that are here. This is going to be a fun show. I really do believe that this will be a good one. And 42 Ultra's comment is pretty funny. Got a sweet 6-way parlay on the election if it wasn't stressful enough already. That is funny. Look, Aaron Gordon goes down 4 minutes into this game last night. He is okay. Boyan asks in the comments, any update on AG? Not a strong one. Michael Malone said he thinks he's fine, that it was more just the bumps and bruises and the overall rigor of the beginning of the schedule that sort of caused this one. And I'm not surprised with how many close games, how many clutch games, how many comeback efforts the Nuggets have had to stage in order to just get to 4-3 at this point. Not a great sign, obviously, for Denver's overall strength as a team, but they've been able to get some wins. Aaron, I would not expect to play in this next game against the Thunder. I don't expect Murray to play in this next game against the Thunder, which means to me, I don't think that Jokic should play in this next game against the Thunder, and they should just punt on it. But that is probably not what's going to happen. Joker will probably play, and they'll just try to do what they did last night. But we'll talk about that at another time. I think that this is going to be fascinating to see. But AG, I would guess, is probably out for a couple games. He had a calf strain. That is not fantastic. But what was fantastic was the way the Nuggets stepped up around him and for him. Peyton Watson came into the game initially. He played from the 8-minute mark in the first quarter to the 11-minute mark in the second quarter, about 9 minutes. And then Michael Malone pulled him out, and he pulled him over to the side. He talked to him on the sideline and effectively said, I believe, I'm going to get you back into this game. He's going to trust him. He's going to do everything he can to give him an opportunity throughout this one because Peyton Watson is there and Aaron Gordon was not. And Denver needed some more defense, and They needed Peyton Watson to get going in this game. That was one thing that really stood out to me in that first quarter stretch, is that Peyton still looked uncomfortable at that moment. There were a couple okay plays, but for the most part on both ends of the floor, he still looked uncomfortable. And rather than go away from him, I think Michael Malone and the coaching staff and everybody just kind of looked at this one and looked at, okay, Jamal Murray's not playing. Aaron Gordon's now going to be out. And they effectively said, you know what? We got to get these young guys going. We got to play these guys. We got to make sure that they get as many good reps as possible here with Jokic, with Michael Porter, with even Russell Westbrook at times. And ultimately, that played really well. It took a while, though, because initially in this game, Denver's turnover troubles were so bad. They were really tough. And it felt like Denver was going to lose this game, I thought, several times, where they got down 14 at different points. They got down 10 in the fourth quarter. They never really staged a full comeback. They were close, but a bad play here, a missed assignment there, a detail play that older players may have like actually had and gone through and not given up. They would have probably come back with Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon and those guys, but it wouldn't have taught anything. And this was a very important teaching moment for the Nuggets young trio of Christian Braun, Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther. Michael Malone stuck with them all. There was at the 6-minute mark, effectively, Michael Malone took out Russell Westbrook and he put back in Michael Porter, who had been staggering in the fourth quarter, got a brief rest. And he took out Russell Westbrook and effectively sat him until the very end when the Nuggets needed some defensive stops in the clutch, like just very small defensive assignments. And there was that 6-minute stretch where Denver was playing without a point guard. They had Jokic, Porter, Brown, Strawther, and Watson. And Michael Malone, I wanted to include this. He told me, I asked him after the game about trusting different people. And he said, I'm saying to myself, holy shit, we're out here with these guys. I never envisioned this lineup being out there to close the game. For me, Ryan, it's fun seeing these guys, especially when you give a guy a chance and they step up and they play well. That's a big deal. It really is a big deal. And I know that Nuggets fans are going to be like, why didn't you? It shouldn't be that hard to play your young players. Shouldn't be that hard. It's hard for every coach that needs to win. Michael Malone's like kind of in the hot seat right now. There's a lot of eyes looking at the Nuggets right now. A lot of eyes. And I know that there hasn't been anything public about Michael Malone's status or anything like that. Just know that things can flip on a dime, and injuries to veterans and getting off to a slow start and not doing the right thing, that can really screw with a coach. And it could screw with an organization and make them decide that they want to do something different. So Michael Malone going with the young guys here is a clear extension of trust, trying to do the right thing for the organization, not just trying to get the win, but trying to teach on the fly. And it really paid off. Christian Braun, with the Nuggets down 5 with about 2.5 minutes to go, hits a clutch 3. He'd been playing really good defense and finally shut off the water for Grady Dick right at the end of the game. Grady Dick had been killing Denver, killing Christian Braun, Julian Strawther, whoever was in front of him for much of the game. But the fourth quarter really slowed down for obvious reasons. The Nuggets did a great job against RJ Barrett throughout the game, in part because Peyton Watson was on him for a lot of that time. But I'll give some credit to Hunter Tyson off the bench, who forced a double technical because I assume he talked some mad crap after RJ missed a shot and was 5 of 17 at the time. RJ finished 5 of 21, looking at the box score here. And mostly, like, the problems that Denver had on the offensive end, like, were very much of the Grady Dick, Jakob Poeltl variety. I thought that Jokic's defense was pretty bad. We'll talk about him in the second segment, but they got through it. That Christian Braun 3 was so big to get them back into this game. They had been trailing by 10 with about 6 minutes to go and finally started to click, but they couldn't quite get all the way there. Julian Strawther drove down the floor in clutch time and with about 3.5 minutes left to go, and then bricked a layup. Like he was doing, like, you try to go through a guy in that moment where a veteran may have pulled the ball out and decided, we're going to try to get a good possession. And then immediately after that Christian Braun three, Julian Strawther gets a steal, and the Nuggets drive down the floor. Michael Porter dishes to Peyton Watson in the corner, and Peyton Watson, of all people, hits a clutch open three. That was a big, big contract, or a big, big deal. And you just don't get those moments that often. How many times have we seen Peyton Watson spot up on the perimeter and kind of cringe a little bit at the beginning of the year because he just has not shot well? I thought that was a big deal. I thought that in the next play where Julian Strawther gets the kick out from Michael Porter, drives the lane and hits a tough bank shot to put the Nuggets up one for good. That was a great moment as well. Just the confidence and the ability to get to that shot in a calm and understanding way and not be wild at that point was a really big deal. And it was funny because it wasn't all Jokic. Jokic had 28, 14, and 14. Michael Porter had a pretty solid game. He didn't shoot the ball necessarily as well as you would hope, but he played pretty well. But it really was that young trio. And to see them step up in this regard, it begets a lot of questions. And I think it shows the direction that Denver needs to continue to go this year specifically. Can't just rely on old reliable all the time. Have to find more creative ways to keep those young guys involved as much as possible throughout the season. It's been good stuff. Yeah, good stuff for sure. There's some people are still BSing about Dario Saric in the comment section right now when we get to talk about a positive thing. So congratulations to the people that are miserable in the comments right now. Cool. Yeah, Hunter Tyson played off the bench. Zeke Naji got off the bench after Aaron Gordon got hurt. Zeke Naji had 2 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, but he had 1 block. He did a really nice job just filling in, doing his job. The missed dunk that he had, though, was hilarious. He also airballed a 3. So, like, you're going to get these wild swings with some of these young guys where it's not necessarily going to be perfect all the time, but the overall development of it and the overall ability to develop in a game like this is very, very important. Hunter Tyson, same thing. He didn't make a single shot. He had an open 3. That was a kick out from, I believe, Russell Westbrook, I believe, and missed it once again. Like, he hasn't been able to hit a shot all year, but his hustle, his rebounding, he only had 1 rebound, and I don't know how, but like, it feels like he's everywhere. Had a steal and a block, is just hustling completely out of his mind. It's been great to see. It's been great to see Hunter Tyson and Zeke Naji and people figure out, like, players that Nuggets fans and Nuggets people didn't really expect to contribute all that much this year. But you just find a way. Look, this is the Raptors. The Nuggets have played the Raptors twice. They've played the Jazz once. They've played Brooklyn once. I'm not going to sit here and say that Denver's going to be able to go full youth movement for the entire time during their regular season. These are some pretty bad teams that Denver's facing. But it doesn't mean that they can't be successful. It doesn't mean that they can't find ways for those guys to improve throughout the year. That's what young guys are supposed to do. And I have a feeling that if Denver stays on this pathway, then they can continue to get those guys to go where they need to go and be a part of things down the line. So this is a good start. This is a really good start figuring out how to function without Jamal Murray, without Aaron Gordon was a really big deal. And I was glad to see all three of those guys, Strawther, Watson, Brown, on the floor together. That was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool moment for sure. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to chat about we're going to chat about Nikola Jokic. We're going to chat about Russell Westbrook. Not necessarily the best game for Jokic, but I thought that Russell Westbrook really stood out in a positive way last night. We will be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we're back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button down below. Hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. Always important to be able to make this happen. We're gonna keep it going. Russell Westbrook, let's start with him. 21 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, did have 4 turnovers, did go 1 of 5 from 3, but I honestly thought that this was a really solid game for Russell Westbrook, filling in for what the Nuggets needed as a veteran for Jamal Murray. This is exactly why they brought in Russell Westbrook. This moment right here, where Denver's got a couple of injuries to their main guys, they need somebody to be a steward for the young players, need somebody who can function, but also can pop a little bit and can do some things and create some opportunities for himself and other people that are in a good position. 6 of 10 from the field for Russell Westbrook, 8 of 10 from the free throw line. And another really solid free throw line game for Russ. There have been some games where he hasn't been able to shoot well from the free throw line, but mostly he's been really good from there. And as long as he is slowing down, some of the moments that he had getting to the free throw line were kind of jump stopping in the lane after receiving the ball on a cut, pump faking, allowing the defense to get into the air, and then drawing the foul. Not necessarily going full speed, but playing on his own terms and outsmarting the defense. And I think that there's something to that for him. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's going to do that all the time, but it was great. It was very, very good. Everybody on that team likes to play with Russ. Sometimes he'll go 100% and maybe it's not the right time to do that. But you can't really fault a guy. I mean, and they don't really fault a guy, especially when they see the effort that he puts in on a consistent basis. And you see what he can do as a defender. He was the one to guard RJ Barrett right at the end of that game. I can't believe that RJ Barrett 3 didn't go down. Just the vantage point that I had, everybody in the arena thought that was going in. And it just rattles out. And we might be talking about this game in a massively different way if that does rattle in. It would be horrible for Denver if if it didn't go down, or if it did go down. But c'est la vie. Denver found a way. I think that Toronto's probably okay with that outcome just because they need to continue to lose games in order to get the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. But I do think in general, Russell Westbrook was pretty solid. He did a lot of good things. He didn't close the game, and I think that's okay. I honestly think that was a great decision by Michael Malone, not necessarily because Russ couldn't function in that moment, but it was more so that they needed the young guys to show some stuff. You're not going to bench Porter. You're not going to bench Jokic. And you're really not going to bench Christian Braun, like with what he's doing. So it was a choice for them to play Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson in that moment. It was a very big gamble by Michael Malone, but I thought it paid off. And I think that it's one of those moments that we're going to think about a lot. And Russ is going to continue to be supportive for those guys. This is a very interesting spot for him to be in his career. In his previous stops, Russell Westbrook's been on a team with the Clippers, a very veteran organization that did not have a whole bunch of young guys to really develop while their core was going together. The Lakers at that point, Not a lot of young guys, especially not a lot of good young guys at the time that Russ was there. Yes, Austin Reeves was there, but it was hard to figure that out while he was there in the moment. And then before that, the Washington Wizards, where he was just like trying to will them to the playoffs the entire time, and nothing else really mattered at that point. And then before that, it's the Houston Rockets. So he hasn't been in a situation, Russ, where there have been a lot of young guys that need to play, that need to contribute, and it's for Denver's best interests that it actually happens. I'm thinking that at this point, this is a really good spot for him where he gets to be a veteran on the floor. He gets to understand what it means for Denver's culture specifically for him to be that guy. And I can see a little bit of Jeff Green in that, playing next to DeAndre Jordan at times where those guys are really leading the young players through. Now, there is some stuff. I mean, Russ has had other moments in other spots that might give me pause, but in general, I think that this should be a pretty good place for him just to function. And as long as he can shoot 6 of 10 a little bit more frequently, then that's a great sign. Like, I don't need him to shoot 100% from the field, but he was shooting like 23%, which was the worst in the entire NBA. So now if he can start elevating that field goal percentage a little bit, just understanding what he needs to accomplish next to this Nuggets team and with this Nuggets group, who knows? Maybe this could be a little bit better than the first 6 games indicated. Nikola Jokic, taking a while for me to really kind of measure out what he did. 28 points, 14 rebounds, 13 assists lists in the box score here. 1 steal, 2 blocks. He did have 7 turnovers. And the last one that he passed to Peyton Watson through the lane in a situation where the Nuggets should probably have just run clock. Jokic said, yeah, he took full blame for that when he said that was just a bad pass. It wasn't on Peyton Watson at all. And I agree. I had a really good vantage on that, a really good angle on that. But Jokic wasn't great. He wasn't great in this game, and I think it's important that Denver win a game where Jokic wasn't great. Despite the counting stats being like 28, 14, and 13, I thought that Jokic was pretty subpar. 10 of 22, 1 of 5 from 3, the 7 turnovers, and I thought that his defense against Jakob Poeltl for much of the game was pretty bad. Poeltl effectively goes for 24 and 11, 11 of 18 from the field, 2 of 4 from the free throw line. And he did ultimately foul out, Poeltl did, but Jokic wasn't really putting up that much resistance against him and allowed him to continue to grab 6. Like, Poeltl grabbed 6 offensive rebounds. That's something that Jokic usually does to every other center, and he did do it tonight. Jokic had 5 offensive rebounds and 14 on the game, so it's not like he was bad. Let me be clear here, but it's just kind of rare, and part of it is because Poeltl got to see him once already and got to figure out some things, figure out where the floater was for him that he could get to, getting to certain jump hooks, getting offensive rebounding position, things like that. But it was just a very impressive performance from the Toronto Raptors center. And Jokic, I thought, was subpar. And yet he's doing what he is doing. It's crazy. And I think both things can be true, right? The expectations that Jokic carries every single game. I mean, he played 38 minutes again last night. And I'm sure that that is wearing on him. I'm also sure that like the overall level of patience that he has with the young guys, with trying to figure out how to win in this moment is probably not super high. But then again, he is a good soldier. He does what he needs to do. He's very supportive of his team, and he will continue to try to get those guys as elevated as possible. But it is a process, and it was a learning curve for everybody last night, not just Michael Malone, but certainly Nikola Jokic too. And then Michael Porter, we'll wrap up with him. Really, I'll probably drop in on 1 or 2 other names. Michael Porter, 36 minutes, 7 of 16 from the field. He had 19 points. I thought he had 20, but he had 9 rebounds and 3 assists and a steal and a block. Didn't necessarily shoot the ball as well as you would hope for, but there were some good things that he did, including final 2 assists of the game for the Nuggets were his kick out assist to Peyton Watson in the corner. And then he swung the ball to Julian Strawther, who then had his dribble drive and floater off the glass. Really impressive stuff from Michael Porter, setting up the young guys, trusting them in that moment. And that's not always going to happen, but obviously the young guys paid him off and did a really nice job of delivering in that time. Michael Porter also had 4 offensive rebounds himself, and that really stood out late in the game or second half especially, where the Nuggets needed to come up with some extra possessions, some extra hustle, and Porter was the one to do it. He was the one to get on the offensive glass and earn some of those extra possessions for Denver, and I think they turned that into points almost every single time he got an offensive rebound. And so that was a big deal. That was a big deal. Denver needs him to be a veteran, and they need him to step up and continue to do the things that he can do. 3 of 10 from 3. I'm not concerned about that. If he can go 5 of 10 from 3 going forward at times, that will be a big deal for Denver. But more than anything, it is the shot number that really helped the Nuggets tonight or last night. It helped everybody else get some floor spacing. Denver figured some stuff out. Somehow Denver only shot 10 of 32 from 3, despite Porter shooting 3 of 10. That means that everybody else attempted 22 total threes. It's not that much. So, without Murray out there, the Nuggets continue to need somebody who is going to rain hellfire from down. And we'll see whether he can do that, whether they can do that. All right. And going forward, just final thoughts here on this last game. DeAndre Jordan played 5 minutes. Okay. This guy is being crazy in the comments. Ryan thinks we are winning tomorrow. He might be crazy. No, I do not. Where did I say that one? I think Denver gets rolled tomorrow by OKC. What are you doing? That's definitely not happening. But yeah, chill out, bro, or else I'm gonna put you in timeout. Yeah, no, I think with Zeke Naji playing, with Hunter Tyson playing, with like DeAndre Jordan only played 6 minutes, and I thought despite the fact that he finished +3, I don't know how he finished +3. He had a block, he had a good deflection, he had a dunk off of a Zeke air ball, had a few rebounds during that time, but the ball just went through his hands a bunch, and I think some of the turnovers that were attributed to Westbrook were more on DeAndre Jordan for letting the ball go through his hands. There was also one right at the end of the quarter in the first quarter where he started setting the screen at like 7 seconds. And then when he actually made contact with the defender, it was about 5 seconds. And then he tried to roll and it was 3 seconds. And Russell Westbrook tried to force a pass in there because they had no other option. It got picked off. And then the Raptors went and had a bucket right at the end of the quarter. So I think that Denver would be better off with Zeke Naji playing. I do. And DeAndre gave Denver a nice little lift in the Utah game. They got to play well, and it was fun, and it was nice, and he got to rock the rim a little bit. But I think the best thing for the Nuggets is for Zeke Naji to play the 5 in that moment, but also stagger and play next to Jokic at the 4. Like, I think both of those things would be good for him. We'll see whether they can get to that lineup, but I think that would be a benefit for Denver. And where Dario Saric fits into that, I don't know. I don't know what ultimately happens there, but it would be nice. Like, Denver's got to try to find a way to get him back on track, but they also got to find a way to get Zeke Naji back on track. So can you do both at the same time? I think that they should try with Zeke because he just had a pretty solid game despite the fact that the counting stats were bad. Hopefully he can get going once again. I don't think that Dario is going to have a good game against OKC. Zeke might. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to chat about a watershed moment for me, something that I think the Nuggets need to have on the top of their list for what they want to accomplish this season. We'll be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we're back. Final segment, Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Let's wrap things up. I had a watershed moment last night just thinking about the game, thinking about the moments, thinking about what Denver had to go through kind of in order to get this one. Jamal Murray's probably out tomorrow against OKC. Aaron Gordon's probably out tomorrow. Nothing official has come out about his status, but I would expect him to be out. And Nikola Jokic, I mean, he's carrying a heavy burden. I would expect him to probably play. If it were up to me, I would sit him and I would just punt the OKC game personally. But that's not the point. The point is that with Murray, the way that he has started the season, not good, and just overall pretty unreliable. With Aaron Gordon, who started the season great overall, but just I think Denver needs to not use him as much. He's in year 11 of his career, and the Nuggets know how long the journey is for this upcoming season. I think in general, the Nuggets need to have more games like they did last night than they did against Brooklyn, where like Brooklyn, I'm pretty sure, yes, Westbrook had a pretty solid game. He shot the ball really well in Brooklyn, or maybe the first Toronto game is a better example where the Nuggets just went with their starters. They trusted their starters to get it done. Those guys all played close to 40 minutes, if not more, in that game. And then it went to overtime, and they relied heavily on the starting unit once again just to get a win. And then guys got pretty tired after that. Now, it's not Michael Malone's fault. He's trying to get a win. He's trying to get a W at that point. There were no moral victories in that one. Like this one, if Denver had lost this game, I don't think Malone would have been that upset. Like no moral victories, obviously, but this one allowed for more kind of range with that than a loss in Toronto would have, with Denver playing all of their main guys a whole bunch of time. This is a little different. And it got me thinking about the process and what Denver should be doing, what they should be trying to accomplish over the course of an 82-game season. Right now, I think you can trust Christian Braun. I think what he's proven, both in the previous couple of years and just stepping up into the starting lineup, there's a little bit more oomph on his game, a little bit more consistency on the three-pointer. He looks confident driving the ball right now, which is really big. Like he shot 7 of 11 last night, 1 of 2 from 3. Didn't shoot a bunch from the outside, but I think continues to prove that he is pretty stable. The real variables for the Nuggets are Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson off the bench. And while Russell Westbrook might be the sixth man for Denver when it comes to the playoffs, I think it's also possible that he's not. I think it's possible that Denver needs to find a way for Julian Strawther to be one of those guys, for Peyton Watson to be one of those guys. And I've talked about this before in the offseason, but last night really crystallized it for me. Having the variability of those guys while also having the stability of either an outside shooter like Julian Strawther or a defensive ace like Peyton Watson on the wing, as opposed to a guard, I think is really big. And it may not get to that point. Like they still may continue to rely on Russ, and maybe that will ultimately prove to be the right decision. But for me, sitting here now and trying to understand and predict where this season is going to go, I think the Nuggets need to make it their absolute top priority for Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther to play 20-plus minutes every single game for the entire regular season. Obviously, they didn't do it last year. Strawther looks like he can handle it a little bit better than Watson overall, but Peyton Watson was at 18 minutes per game last year, and Strawther only played 500 total minutes, and he was more of the 10th man, 11th man for Denver, and then got hurt and didn't really have that experience after that. So I think those guys need to get comfortable, and Michael Malone needs to get comfortable being uncomfortable with those bench guys. Part of the story for this overall picture in the NBA right now is how cash-strapped every single one of these teams is. Think about Lonnie Walker, who the Nuggets were actually rumored to be interested in yesterday. I wrote about that. Lonnie Walker was on the Boston Celtics. He was going to be the 15th man. The Celtics decided to go with 14 players because they had no extra money, and they're trying to duck the second tax apron, not just for like money purposes, but because the payments and the actual competitive limitations are so high. They are so high. Denver needs to continue to find ways to develop young talent from within. And these young guys like Julian Strawther's in his second year. Christian Braun and Peyton Watson are in their third. Next year, those guys are still going to be cheap. The year after is when things get really complicated, and we might start to see some changes to what this Nuggets organization looks like in general. Probably breaking up the core, I would say, after 2 years. But for Denver to be ready to do that, for them to actually make a good decision in that process, they need to know what they have. And to fully know what you have in these moments, you have to put them in stressful situations. You can't just say, yeah, we're only going to play you the big minutes against Toronto. You got to sometimes play the big minutes against OKC, or the big minutes against Minnesota, or the big minutes against pick a team, the Lakers. Sometimes that's going to have to happen. Mike Malone's never been about that. Like, when Denver has their main guys together, he trusts their main guys. And very often, he'll just trust what the team has done over the course of these past few years. But with the departure of Bruce Brown, with the departure of KCP, with other veterans coming and going like Jeff Green, Reggie Jackson, etc., Denver's guys are shifting. And we might be in a situation where Denver's guys might shift from one of the core members to somebody way younger. And I think that this is just one of those moments in time for Denver where it could get really complicated really quickly. And you need to know who you can trust in those moments. I think you can trust Christian Braun, whether he's their future starter, whether he's a role player in the end, whatever it ends up being. I think you can trust Christian Braun. I'm not sure about Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson just yet. I want to believe. I've seen the vision. I know what they should be trying to do. And I think that they should be playing them a lot, especially while there are some injury concerns, while you're just trying to get through a regular season, and while you have the best player in the world who can elevate everybody. But in my mind, I think that Denver can really make some hay by elevating their young guys and putting them into positions to succeed and seeing what they can do. I'm looking forward to it. It's still very early in the season. They've played 7 games. They're not even 10% of the way through. And I'm just at the moment right now in time where I see where this is going. I see how much of a burden Joker's carrying. I see Aaron Gordon already breaking down a little bit because of the high level of basketball that he's played and the high minutes that he's played. Murray's already hurt. That wasn't his fault. He got concussed by Julius Randle's elbow or shoulder. but you just need to find ways to open up your team a bit. Think about how unreliable anybody outside of the core four was for Denver at the beginning of this season, where you didn't really know what you were going to get. And then Christian Braun played great, and he entered that starting five and is not going to exit anytime soon. We'll see whether they can do something similar with Julian Strawther and Peyton Watson, because I think that there is absolutely some opportunity for those guys to really prove it. And ditto off the bench for guys like Zeke Naji and Hunter Tyson, who didn't get a ton of opportunity last year or earlier this season. Hunter Tyson's been hustling his ass off, trying to get some opportunities for himself. That shot is eventually going to drop. He just needs to see one go through, and I think he'll be a little bit better. Like he'll be a little bit more consistent at that point. But the way that he's hustling, the way that he's playing, Zeke Naji, I want to see, as I mentioned. I think that Denver's just got to go through that way. I think that that's the route that they have to take. It's the hand that Michael Malone has been dealt, because Denver didn't make a whole bunch of moves for other solid veteran pieces. And I think that it's just time for Michael Malone to really fully contribute that to this Nuggets season. As I mentioned in the first segment, that puts Michael Malone in a pretty dangerous position, because he has an obligation to be winning for this Nuggets team. If they start losing, and they're going to go through a pretty tough gauntlet here over the course of these next 7, 8, 9 games. If they start losing and they can't really recover, going to be pretty dangerous. So he's going to have a really good coaching job. I thought that this last game was his best coaching job of the year, by far. And I'm curious to see how he handles it. I want to see him be successful with this. I want to see him stick around and be Denver's winningest coach of all time, which he is about 4 games away from doing. So if he can make that happen, if the Nuggets can make that happen, if he can really fully commit to these young guys that Calvin Booth has brought in and said they need to play, they probably need to play. And Denver doesn't have that many options otherwise. So I'm looking forward to it, man. We will see what happens, but folks, I think that is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll. Good episode. Good stuff from Denver. A fun game to be able to talk about. I am very interested to see how they respond. No podcast tomorrow night, or tomorrow morning, excuse me. Denver will play in they'll play on Wednesday night against OKC. Again, I'm not having high expectations for something like that. OKC's just been an absolute unit to start the year. So we'll see what they can do. We'll see whether Denver can surprise some people. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Really appreciate the love and support on the podcast as always. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. Would mean the absolute world. I'll talk to you guys very soon.